First and foremost, want to give honor and do benevolence unto Yah, the creator of heaven and earth, commonly known to most people as God. This presentation here on CD is to uplift the children of Israel from out of the stupor of thinking that our culture comes from Egypt. Egypt is not the forerunner of the culture of Israel. And in this presentation on CD, I will attempt to, with the guidance of the Father, to be able to assist in the awakening of our people from that horrible understanding. If we go into the scriptures itself, namely the book of Leviticus 18:1, it says, "And Yah spoke unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, I am the Lord your God. After the doings in the land of Egypt wherein ye dwelt, ye shall not do. And after the doings of the land of Canaan, whither I bring you, shall ye not do, neither shall ye walk in their ordinances." So from Leviticus 15, we already are able to deduce that the Torah, which includes this portion right here, can have not come from Egypt upon the uses of common sense. If the culture of Egypt is the forerunner of the culture of Israel, why would the culture of Israel in Israel's book say don't follow the ways of Egypt? That right there just goes to show you that it's incorrect. If we also go within the scriptures, let us go to Deuteronomy, the 26th chapter. We're going to start in the 5th verse. Deuteronomy 26, verse 5, and it reads as follows. "And thou shalt speak and say before the Lord your God, a Syrian ready to perish was my father, and he went down into Egypt and sojourned there with a few, and became there a nation mighty, great, and populous. And the Egyptians dealt ill with us and afflicted us, and laid upon us hard bondage. And when we cried unto the Lord God of our fathers, the Lord heard our voice, and looked on our affliction and our labor and our oppression. And the Lord brought forth out of Egypt us with a mighty hand, and with an outstretched arm, and with great terribleness, and with signs and with wonders. And he hath brought us into this place, and have given us this land, even a land flowing with milk and honey." So this right here in Deuteronomy 26, verses 5 through 9, shows you the origin of where the children of Israel came from. The children of Israel came from, on the maternal side, from the Arameans or the Syrians, and on the paternal side being the nation of Israel or Israel. So if we go, if we can, into the book of Ezekiel to confirm this once again. Ezekiel, the prophet, chapter 23, we're going to start in verse 15 and then go on into the historical aspect of this lesson here. "Girded with girdles upon their loins, exceeding in dyed attire upon their heads, all of them princes to look to, after the manner of the Babylonians of Chaldea, the land of their nativity." So this right here, according to Ezekiel, the Hebrew Israelite prophet, he is telling the people in their history where they came from. They did not come out of Egypt, nor did the culture of Israel come out of Egypt. Okay, now, let us continue. I have a book here entitled The Egyptian Book of the Dead, The Coming Forth by Day, by Muwatta Ashby. And on page 28, we see the following. "The dynastic period is what most people think of whenever ancient Egypt is mentioned. This period is when the pharaohs, kings ruled. The later part of the dynastic period is when the biblical story of Moses, Joseph, Abraham, etc. occurs. Therefore, those with a Christian background generally only have an idea about ancient Egypt as it is related in the Bible. Although this biblical notion is very limited in scope, the significant impact of ancient Egyptian on Hebrew and Christian culture is evident from even the biblical scriptures." Now that's according to what that particular author has to say. So we see a reference in which people who are into Egyptian science and Kemetic studies attempt to say that the Torah is a plagiarism, or as some state, a copycat of the ancient Kemetic science or the ancient Egyptian culture. In the same book here on page 120, we read the following. "Akhenaten's teachings were given less than 200 years before the supposed date of the existence of Moses. However, Moses' teaching was not understood as absolute monism, but rather as monotheism. Therefore, whether the Jewish Pentateuch was written by a person named Moses or by Jewish scribes much later, as most biblical scholars now agree, the influence of Akhenaten's teachings would have been foremost in the instruction of Moses. Remember that the Bible says Moses learned the wisdom of the Egyptians, according to the New Testament book of Acts 7:22. While all the attributes of Yahweh, the Hebrew God, are contained in the teachings related to Aton, the hymns to Aton go further in espousing the nature of God and God's relationship to creation and humanity. So, according to Muata Ashby in his book here entitled The Egyptian Book of the Dead, the Book of the Coming Forth by Day, he is stating that Akhenaten was the prelude to the teachings of the prophet Moses. Now, I have secular notes, side notes, if you will, to actually, as an Israelite, counteract that idea that Muata Ashby presented. And I'm going to read a part of the book that I wrote concerning the historical aspect of this nature. The Assyrian and Babylonian kings mention several of the kings of Israel and Judah in their records. Lists of those kings are as follows: Ahab, Omri, Jehu, Menachem, Hosea, Pekah, Ahaz, Jehoiakim, and Manasseh. The Assyrian king, Shalmaneser III, mentions Ahab, king of Israel, in a war that the Bible itself does not record. So we have to deal with having an open mind and not tunnel vision. The point of me saying that is because some people feel that everything that ancient Israel had came out of Egypt. But the fact that Assyria mentions things about Israel that the Bible itself doesn't mention, and Assyria and both Egypt is independent of Egypt, then we can know and understand that there's something wrong with some people's understanding, such as Mr. Ashby's. Let us continue. In ancient Egypt, there were 33 dynasties. Of the 33 dynasties, we see that the 15th, 16th, 22nd, 25th, 27th, 31st, 32nd, and 33rd were ruled by those who are not natives of the land of Kemet or Egypt itself. The 15th and 16th dynasties were Hyksos from Asia. The 22nd were Puttites or Libyans. The 25th were Cushites or Ethiopians. The 27th and 31st were Persians or the people of Elam. The 32nd and 33rd were Greeks. The last Greek ruler of Egypt was Ptolemy the 15th. After the rule of the Greeks over Egypt, Egypt became a Roman province. Is this why Egyptologists are so fascinated about Egypt, or are they researching the place they conquered? Not to sound arrogant, but not one king on the throne of Israel or Judah was not of the line of Israel or Judah. Though spiritually, some of the kings of ancient Israel and Judah, well, most of them were actually wicked, we see that all the good and the bad kings that ruled over Israel were of their own people. In the 6th to the 12th century AD, we see that the religion of Islam was rife, or that is to say widespread in the earth. We see that is the reason why our people, so-called blacks, were made to convert to Islam. Thus today we see Muslims in Africa. There are, as J.A. Rogers stated in his book, 100 Amazing Facts About the Negro with Complete Proof, he stated that West Africa has black Jews also. We see how there are Muslims in Africa, but what can we state of there being black Jews in Africa? Did the Jews do to blacks in Africa as the Muslims or the Arabs or the Ishmaelites in Africa did to the black man there? No. There was no jihad against those of the El Shahariya or the Holy War against those of the days of ignorance, as was done to blacks by Arabs in Africa. So how can we account for the records left by Mungo Park, Leo Scipio Africanus, J.A. Rogers, and Nahum Schultz, among others, who state that the blacks fled from Israel, the land, during the Greek and Roman Empire and scattered in western northern Africa? There was no mass conversion of blacks by force in Africa to become Jews or follow anything remotely tied to what is referred to as Judaism of today. If anything, if we look at the fact that the Beta Israel, who are caught for lashes, were actually shot at by guns by Ethiopians while they were being airlifted to Israel in 1991 AD, we see that Israelites are to a certain extent disliked by some people from Africa itself, unfortunately. Some state that Israel copied the belief in one God from Akhenaten, who ruled in the 18th dynasty. However, people are not understanding that the belief in one God predated Akhenaten himself. Akhenaten, according to the Torah, would have been a pagan. Akhenaten believed in the sun as God, not as God the Most High himself, the creator of all things. Thus, we as Israelites know and understand the belief in one God and the belief in the Most High God are two different things. Historically speaking, Egypt had many conquerors and has conquered many places. In the Bible, for instance, in 2 Chronicles, the 12th chapter, we see that Shishak, king of Egypt, invaded Israel, is to be identified with Shishak of the 22nd dynasty of Egypt. Shishak of Egypt made a boast of how he went into the land of Israel and conquered lands. Egypt, in her history, had certain nations paying tribute and ruled over their land. The ancient Canaanites, in ancient history, made a plea to Akhenaten of Egypt to send help to Jerusalem due to the people called the Habiru who were attacking. This can be found in what is referred to as the Amarna records. Egypt had provinces in other lands. In the time of Esarhaddon of Assyria, we see that Egypt was conquered in 671 BCE. Then in the time of Cyrus of Persia, we see that Egypt was conquered in 525 BCE. The Persian Empire was from 538 to 331 BCE proper. Egypt was not in much power of herself after Cyrus conquered her. The Persian rule over Egypt was during the 27th dynasty of Egypt, when Cambyses, who was the son of Cyrus, was ruling over Egypt at that particular time. Then Egypt came back under Nektabo in the 28th dynasty and ruled over their people, but that was short-lived. Persia came back and ruled over Egypt yet again. The Persian Empire came to an end when Alexander, the son of Philip of Macedon, defeated the army of Darius III, Commodius. The native Egyptians, believe it or not, were happy to see Alexander defeat their rulers, who were the Persians. And for a reference about that, you can go into J.C. de Graff's book entitled African Glory. Esarhaddon of Assyria was the successor of Shalmaneser V of Assyria. Shalmaneser invaded and defeated Israel in the year 722 BCE, which was before Assyria invaded Egypt. The point in mentioning this is, how can Israel be copycats of Egyptian history and culture when other nations independent of Egypt and Israel speak of Egypt at one point and Israel at another point? Cyrus, who conquered Egypt, was the same Cyrus who defeated Babylon and permitted the Israelites who were chose to go back to Jerusalem to do so and to build what is referred to as the Second Temple. History shows that claims of Israel not existing, or if Israel did exist, copying their culture from Egypt, is incorrect. Most brothers, and this is no disrespect intended, who are into the Kemetic science, do not separate Kemet from Akibulan. Akibulan, also known as Africa of today, is a continent. The continent of Akibulan housed many different people, though they were not of the same skin tone. Kemet is a country that was in a continent of Akibulan. Interesting is the fact that ancient Egypt, or Kemet, was very clear about their nation and their independent spirit and status. Yet, brothers today try to incorporate Kemet and Akibulan as if it was one whole united culture. No offense, but that is the way the European man who colonized and tried to group things based on the outward appearance attitude is. Egyptologists began to dig in Egypt while the black man was enslaved in the Western Hemisphere. Jean F. Champollion is considered the quote-unquote father of Egyptology. He translated the hieroglyphs that people read today. Upon study for this article and this presentation for the CD, I attempted to find any black Egyptologists.